Oh, hang on. What's fun about this new intro is I can watch all of our guests with their heads bobbing up and down with this track hum, which is fantastic.
It is.
James O'Brien has a podcast called All Your Days, and he did an episode about Utopia Revisited, which was really fantastic. And I ended up talking a lot about Lionel in it because he was asking me about, I know, because he's asking me about...
Because I had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, that's you did. You had something to do with it.
He asked me a lot of questions about Mark Meadows and his involvement in the production of Utopia Revisited, because Mark Meadows probably had more impact than
there are hearings. You had impact. You actually suggested one of the songs that I wrote when I was there, but also he wanted to know if this was a return to electronic music, and I talked a little bit about camping out on your floor in the tiny apartment on Locust Street, and how we put together that tape called Ha that I don't want to play for anyone, but that was very much kind of that acoustic electronic mix. But I did get your influences wrong. I said Yaz, and I should have said Art of Noise. Art of Noise was something you were listening to a lot back then. Is that right, Lionel?
Probably, yeah. I mean, Art of Noise was an interesting, it's actually interesting, the name of the band, because Art of Noise actually refers to a Italian futurist during the futurism. This is where Jim's like,
we're going to have to go back to the Civil War. I know it.
So there's this guy called Garibaldi. But during the Italian futurist movement, which is after the First World War, there's this movement in Italy called futurism. I forget the guy's name, but I really got turned on to him via this website that I totally recommend to everybody. I totally recommend everybody sign up for this website called, I'm probably mispronouncing the name of it. Feuilleton. But it's basically this guy called John Coulthart, Coulthart. And the name of the website is Feuilleton, which is FEUILLETON. And you can tell that this guy is really committed to his art, because you would never name your website on something like this that has like 6 vowels in all the wrong places. But anyway, he turned me on to the futurist, and one of the futurist guys made these orchestras of people with these machines that would make all these industrial noises, and he called it the Art of Noise. And so the British band, the Art of Noise, Art of Noise was really, really interesting. Actually, the music is really kind of unlistenable to a certain degree. Well, it's not unlistenable. Well, it's not relaxing. They did instances of Moments in Love, which is a beautiful a good tune. I think it's based upon something else, but they were definitely part of that first wave of sampler-based people who were like all orchestral hits and really loud stuff and huge booming digital drums and things like that. So anyway, Yaz was not, I wasn't a Yaz guy.
I got it wrong, but whatever. It's out there. Speaking of unlistenable, you're listening to Funny Not Funny, the podcast, and we are joined today with Ben Burns and Sarah Elkins. Hello. And we call ourselves, we are the Parasocial.
I started it as the Parasocial Books Club or Book Club because I was listening to your podcast and I was just replying in Patreon. And it's like, I didn't really know you guys as well back then, Jim. Like, we had talked about working together on that one song, and we hadn't really actually started on it because I was dragging my feet. And so I thought it was just kind of parasocial. I was just responding to you guys. Like, you read these books. This is what I read. It was so much fun. And then you guys we started talking, and you invited me on the podcast, and all of a sudden, like, it's not Parasocial anymore, but I still like
the Parasocial Book Club. No,
I like
it's a
the
great
name
title.
Of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel that Oprah kind of started that before we did, but
well, this is the second meeting of the Parasocial Book Club, but it's the first time we're calling it that. So we now have a name. It's nice to have both of you with us again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Let's see, Sarah, what have you been up to? More of the same. You don't have to say, or anything to report in the past. What was it, like 7 months? I forget how long ago it was you came on.
I had fun at my niece's wedding shower on Sunday, which was outside. I've been doing a tremendous amount of work, which has finally gotten to sane levels again. This month, I did get to take a week vacation in August.
Where'd you go? What did you do?
North Carolina. I saw some of my other family, the North Carolina, some of them, and really, I kind of lazed in the pool while my sister helped my niece move into her new apartment. I bowed out of the let's go argue with the leasing office. I see Lionel agreeing with that approach. So I was there for vacation. So I did my best to be on vacation.
And where in North Carolina? It's a very
Raleigh
long
area.
State.
I have some family there. So
nice.
I've certainly been doing some reading and talking with people. Some of my own local, although we Zoom, book clubs, and enjoying things there. But I can't say I've done anything dramatically reportable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we'll get to books because I'm reading something new thanks to Lionel, and I'm reading something interesting to my kids. But Ben, tell me about what you've been up to.
Oh, in general?
Well, let's see. The last time we met was last year, wasn't it? It was a year ago, I think.
Can't remember the last time we talked, but I have had a very busy year when it comes to music and releases and everything else. I think I've put out 3 albums, a community remix album, and I've just been pushing out a bunch of other stuff. So I've put out a lot of music this year. I actually just got off of my weekly stream to get onto this chat. So I finished a song basically about 20 minutes ago, but it's been good. Like I've run into some like creative ennui earlier this year, but I feel like I finally got through it. I don't know. I felt very like I haven't had a lot of good motivation, and I don't know if that was just
you do something once a week. I mean, my God,
I do, and like it's a blessing and a curse because I do stuff every week, which is great, but it's not always like what I want to do. But it's kind of like going to the gym, you just got to do it and get it over with sometimes. And sometimes it's great.
I really don't know what that's
going to the gym.
Yeah, I'm not tracking that one.
Okay.
Jim? What's it? I thought Jim is the guy talking.
Yeah.
I'm at the gym all the time.
Yeah. The other thing, another big thing for us is I'm gesturing at some kittens in the background. We got kittens a couple months ago, and
nice.
I would show them to the camera, but this is an audio only podcast and I don't want to activate them because they're actually sleeping for once.
Yeah.
But they have been very lovely.
What kind of kittens are they? Are they mutts? Or are they a particular breed that you can identify?
It's a black cat and a calico. The black cat is named Butter because he melts when you pick him up, and the calico is named Toots because she's a cutie patootie. She's very small. I'll send you guys some pictures, and if you want to throw that in the show notes
kittens
or something.
Kittens are the best.
They are.
Also, puppies are the best too, but I love kittens.
Yeah, the story of how we came across them is a little sad. We had a friend's father who was discovered to be a hoarder, so like there was just a ton of cats and stuff in his house, and the house was basically unlivable. So he had to move, and then there was a huge thing with like capturing all the cats and stuff.
That's terrifying.
It was, but we got all the kittens and one of the mama cats into like a friend's house, and we basically spent the next 2 months socializing them until they were ready to kind of be separated and kind of move on. So we took 2 of them, and one of our neighbors actually took 2 more, so we can like the siblings can kind of grow together, which is really nice.
Good. That's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I heard that all of the adult cats were finally captured and kind of disseminated out to all of the other shelters and stuff around the cities. So it has a happy ending, but it was not a happy start. That's for sure.
But what is it? Why do people surround themselves with stuff? I mean, I know a lot of people have written about it.
We all do. It's a matter of degree.
Yeah, right.
It's a matter of degree. Trust me, I just drove a 20-foot moving truck, 1,800 miles that was stuffed from end to end, from floor to ceiling with meaningless crap.
And you had tried to pare it down a lot before.
And the best thing that could have happened to me is if that truck ran over a cliff without me in it, preferably. Honestly, it would have been such a great thing. We are. Don't get me started.
No, it's odd. It is truly odd. Sarah,
I read a science fiction book a couple of years ago that had as its main character, you slowly figured out she's a massive hoarder. She's a community leader, and nobody knows that behind her walls, she's like, she can't bear to let anything go because of past trauma. Mm-hmm. And so she goes around and collects everything that anyone else in the colony is throwing away and hoards it instead of putting it into the community recycler. And so things go bad. You know, there are problems. She's not the only problem in the community, but it was chilling. I'll look up the name of this and put it to you, because it was very uncomfortable reading that book as you realized what's going on in it. And, you know, the science fiction aspect wasn't directly related to the hoarding, other than the community, you know, we need our raw materials back.
Yeah. I like the community recycler.
That's really interesting.
So that's an interesting thing about it. I think there's that sense that it needs to be each item needs to be put to its proper use. And so we can't let go of it. We can't just, and maybe also there's that sense of, you know, I don't want it to go in the landfill, even though it's all destined for the landfill, right? Mm-hmm. Unless we end up with we get a community recycler somewhere in our neighborhood someday. You know, eventually your kids will throw all of it out, so
there's just multiple temporarily. There's multiple streams that feed into it. The one stream that feeds into it is mementos. Mm-hmm. I can't throw this out because this is what my friend gave to me on my 13th birthday. I can't throw this out. I think a lot of it is theater of memory. I think we keep a lot of objects around. Well, it's also keeping our marbles. Like it's literally the theater of memory. It's these objects around us that remind us of our friendships and where we've been and what we've done and all that kind of stuff. So I think a lot of people do it for that reason. Mm-hmm. Or they do it partially for that reason. And then there's I might need this someday.
Right.
You know, I got the book title. It's Planet Fall by Emma Newman, a British writer, 2015. So I do recommend it.
It's a novel?
It is a novel, a science fiction novel, and hoarding, it plays part of it. It's pretty creepy when you start realizing just what's been going on.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Let's see. Ben, you listed a bunch of books in an email to me. That was the inspiration for having you on, actually.
Yeah, I have, like I said in the email, I have a lot of stuff going on, so I have been procrastinating. And I've been reading a lot of books and consuming a lot of media, which has been a lot of fun. But it's also not exactly what I should be doing right now. But yeah, I have been reading the Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle, I guess it's a series, Inferno and Escape from Hell, which is their kind of interpretation on Dante's Inferno. The original book Inferno was written, I think, in like 1983. Something. It's quite a bit older. Yeah. And then Escape from Hell came out in 2010. So I think that they had a lot of requests for more. And I really enjoyed the first one. I read the first one several times back when I was younger. And I read the second one for the first time, and it was all right. It wasn't exactly the same caliber that I was looking for. It was kind of like more of a almost like a tour, or like a second route or second run through the first book, where it's kind of going through all this stuff. It's like, oh, where would this person be if he were in hell, and all this other stuff, which is interesting, but it wasn't exactly like a continuation of the story as much as it was just kind of like it's not even a rehash or a sequel as much as it just kind of like builds off of what was there, but it doesn't really expand much further. It talks a little bit about like the bureaucracy of hell, which is something that I always find endlessly entertaining in pretty much any kind of media. And I had suggested watching the show The Good Place because of that too, because The Good Place is a fantastic TV series that only ran for 4 seasons, but every episode is like knows exactly what it wants to do, and it just moves on. Like it does not stay in any particular spot, which is something that I love about good TV, where it's not like, let's spend a whole season talking about this one thing and then move on from there.
Yeah, there's
1976.
76. Wow.
Oh, that was Inferno. I remember reading it in the early 80s, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't remember it very well. I remember it was really fun.
Yeah, it's a very good book. I like that one a lot. And if you liked Inferno, I would still recommend reading Escape from Hell. It's just like it feels like it doesn't have the teeth that the first book does. It's like it goes through all the same motions, and it's very interesting, but it's not as engaging as the first one, just because it's not as new, I guess, and it's just kind of rehashing the same circles again. But I enjoyed them both. They were both very good.
And you read Neuromancer for the first time.
Oh my gosh, I did, didn't I? That book, I think I described it as kind of a fever dream. And I think that's just like, and now the writer's name is
William Gibson.
Thank you. It escaped me, but like I think that's just kind of how he writes, where it's very like dialogue and then very abstract visuals. And I really enjoyed it though. I felt like it was a little bit easier to consume than Peripheral, but maybe that was because I was a little bit more.
No, it is Peripheral.
Okay.
Peripheral's Gibson after he's been doing this for 30 years, and he has perfected the art of completely dislocating you, like completely, like literally. Everybody I asked to read the Peripheral, I said read 100 pages and then stop and start over again. It'll go a lot easier for you.
Yeah,
I read a book of short stories by William Gibson that he wrote in the 80s.
Burning Chrome.
I liked that. Yes, Burning Chrome. Thank you, Lionel.
Oh.
I thought that had some really interesting ideas in it, and short, sharp hits on different ideas. So if you want a taste of him, definitely there's imagery in there. There's at least one story about people in the future looking back at how people in the past looked at the future and what that was going to mean, and how did that shape where we actually got to. Other things, just small little things. A dancer who had gotten some bioware to embedded in her skin that would dance as she danced. Interesting ideas, a collage of interesting ideas.
Interesting. That would be great, actually, to go back and reread that. I did read that when it came out, but I just remember Johnny Mnemonic because it got hammered into my head with Reeves and
I know Kung Fu. I actually rewatched that last night.
You did. What did you think? I mean, now wait a minute. Henry Rollins is in that, right? Henry Rollins is the doctor.
I forgot about that. Yeah, he's like the medical guy.
In what? Johnny Mnemonic?
Johnny Mnemonic.
No, I was talking about The Matrix.
Oh, he's not in The Matrix.
I know Kung Fu. I was like, Henry Rollins is in The Matrix? Whoa.
No, he's in Johnny Mnemonic, and that is maybe the best part of the whole movie.
Yeah, Johnny Mnemonic and the one about the biplanes, the video game where they're playing with biplanes. That's what he did with Bruce Sterling. That was a good
story. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was like I think it was him and Bruce Sterling or Neil Stevenson. They did that one, and then I don't remember the one about I don't remember the ones you talked about.
Well, I read the Difference Engine that he wrote with Bruce Sterling.
I made it part of the way through. Yeah,
it's got its pros and cons. It's not pleasant reading, but it's again got some interesting ideas.
It's one of those. Here's a cool idea, and it's just too much of the cool idea. Like this is the idea that early computers, like weaving machines, or these mechanized computers, the Babbage engine became actual computers, and it changed that changed the world. But really, the origin of like steampunk in some ways. It's
the perfect steampunk novel.
Yeah.
What I loved most about the Difference Engine was there's something about where one of the guys goes to there's like some people from the commune of Manhattan, and they're visiting London, and they give a presentation. What you realize what they're talking about is like this gigantic LCD display, but instead of LCD, it's these little flip cards because everything has to be mechanical. And so everything is like a giant train station schedule display. And it was really clever. But yeah, in general, the book was a real letdown. It really was. It's really fast. I mean, go ahead.
It was getting into some of the grit and unpleasantness. And that's part of what I found it hard to read. It got into a lot of the smog of London and
prostitution.
Sex. Yes. And that's part of the, I mean, the steampunk part was fine. That was fun. And I did like that it got a little into even how that's kind of glorified. We're all going to be free, and yet they still had slaves, some of the characters, and saying, we're all brothers, we'll share our slave. So it had points to it. I just, I just would brace myself before reading it. So,
the difference. It's interesting how you have two great writers. Two great writers. I mean, but the problem is they're two completely different writers. William Gibson and Bruce Sterling are two completely different writers.
But, I mean, William Gibson and anybody.
Sure.
I mean, how do you?
But also
know
Bruce Sterling.
Style?
Bruce Sterling has a Bruce Sterling has this. I understand why Bruce Sterling loves Italy, because his style is very Italian.
Yeah,
it's very light. And he doesn't pound you over the head. It's always funny. It's always got a little wry smile and everything. It's always very wonderful and entertaining and charming. And it's always really bittersweet. And that's not William Gibson at all. William Gibson. I mean, they're not even in the same 4-dimensional space time. Yeah. And so when they went together, and the difference engine is fascinating. I mean, it really is amazing to think, what if Babbage had pulled it off?
Right.
And he came really close.
Yeah, no, it just seemed like he just petered out, right?
Well, he didn't have a business manager.
Lovelace was on him, but he just was like, didn't want to.
He kept wanting to improve things, and so he'd throw away what he'd been working on and say, "Oh, there's this new thing. I'll do that."
And he didn't have a business manager. His finances went to shit because he got a lot of money. The British government invested a lot of money in William Babbage. But it just went nowhere and stuff like that. But what if he had found somebody who's a good accountant who kept him on the rails? I mean, it's mind blowing. I mean, I think in that sense, it's a really good book because it could have worked. I mean, it could have really changed the world really early on.
Do you remember? I don't remember this in the book. Is Ada in the book at all? Is she represented?
She's in a black veil, and they don't name her.
Right.
So it's more like an image of this woman in a veil drifting through the Great Lady. And to my reading, and to some commentary that I read, that was Lovelace, not say Queen Victoria or something like that. Victoria also wore black, but I read it as something about the founder of this wonderful new, or the goddess, however,
the programmer,
absolutely.
Oh, that's so odd, and what a missed opportunity, right? To really be able to expand a really important character, maybe more important than Babbage.
And we talked about this too, Jim. We read something about Ada Lovelace. We read a book. And we read The Information by Gleick.
Yes.
Yeah, and there was a chapter about Ada Lovelace and her letters.
Heartbreaking.
Right.
Heartbreaking. She is such a volcano. She's an entire universe inside a human body.
I suggested that book.
Yeah,
and it was great too. I mean,
her letters are fabulous. Yeah. It's just oh my god, this is somebody. This is somebody who should be, if we could go back in history, just give her the opportunity. Can you imagine what she would have done? Oh my God.
In my third book, there's a group of people who worship her.
Good.
They're literally, she's like a religious figure to them.
Yep.
So, I know. And that seems sad. But it is good that The Information does at least credit her as being at least as important as Babbage.
A lot more awareness of how foundational she was to what was going on there. And she, the work she did on making what was going on decipherable to other people. Papers that she wrote that then Babbage kind of had published without her knowledge that upset her, but that made more clear what was going on. Oh. Anyway, there's been a lot of scholarship done in the last 20 years on her that maybe wasn't as available when the Difference Engine was being written.
Cool.
Right.
Okay, so we've done one book so far, right?
Well, we touched on a number, right? All right, but Ben? Yes.
So I was going to say this. I had called it the Parasocial Media Club because I had also watched The Flash, which I thought was great. Yeah, I kind of like, it was dumb, but it felt like it was dumb on purpose. Where it's just like, the producers were like, I know this is really weird and silly, but just like go with this on this.
Yeah.
Just like, let's go on this journey together, because like it really felt like it was a superhero movie that didn't take itself seriously, which I feel like more should like not take themselves seriously.
Absolutely. It was a family film. It was a film you could bring your kids to. And all of the superhero movies have just gotten darker and darker.
Yeah.
And it's like, DC had to realize at some point, it's like, well, our audience is now becoming like, they have kids.
Yeah.
Right? All of the people we've been making movies for when they were kids, they now have kids. We need to make a movie for them. And I felt like The Flash did that. And then, of course, all the millennial dads jumped on it and tore it to shreds. I thought it was great.
Yeah. And speaking of that, I also watched the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie recently, the one that came out like I think a month ago, and that was really fun. As somebody who grew up watching the cartoon and everything, it was a real joy to kind of see somebody actually realize those characters with like actual love and heart, instead of just like kind of a corporate, we need to get a movie out or else we're not going to make money off of this wave. I
never watched the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but I did read a Wall Street Journal article about the guy, I forget who it was either the guy who's the president of Hasbro or Mattel, who turned them down.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
And they came to him, they said, how'd you fuck that up? And he says, look, a bunch of people come to you and tell you that the spirit of dead dinosaurs inhabit these turtles so they can go battle a villain called Rita Repulsa who lives in the moon. Yeah, I didn't get it. Sue me. But come on. Would you have done anything differently?
I just want to say I read the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comic. And I got right away the reference to Daredevil. There's an accident that makes Daredevil who he is. And basically the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle thing is the same accident that gave him his powers. There was like a trickle down effect, and there were these little turtles on the ground, and they started, I had for a while the cartoon Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Back when I had an answering machine, I actually put that on the tape as my answering, Jim, message. And people
let's cut this part out, Jim. Okay, we got to edit. We got to protect Sarah because she's going to start getting death threats.
I let my freak flag fly.
Yes, that's what you should.
I had a Codaphone. I love my Codaphone.
But yeah, like I really enjoyed that movie. I had a lot of fun with it, and I felt like the whole intro for the cartoon, they kind of interspersed those scenes throughout the movie in a way that was, like it was recognizable, but it wasn't just like obvious. And like I felt, they did a great job with it. It's like the Spider-Verse movies. I feel like the people who are animating those actually like give a care, and like actually want to make something that's artful and interesting rather than just like churning something out. Like
I have yet to see them because I can't watch anything right now. There's just, my schedule doesn't permit any unless I go out to a movie with the family. I don't have time.
Have you tried procrastinating more?
Yeah, I know. I should just, instead of working,
take a procrastination.
Put something on.
Works for me.
Yeah, probably would be more.
Has anybody seen Oppenheimer in 70 mil? I
haven't seen Oppenheimer.
No, I haven't.
No,
I heard that it was really good.
The most recent thing I saw was American Born Chinese, which is a series on, I think, Disney. I watch it with my sister on her account, and it's I believe based on a comic book. It's contemporary high school setting, but also has characters from Journey to the West, the Chinese epic, and basically somebody's kind of a refugee hiding out in this high school, and it was fun. It also had cringy high school moments, where you're saying, no, don't, be a better person or whatever. We liked it a whole lot. The season finale of season 1, we were just cheering and loved it. It was a lot of fun, but nice. It has the main name characters it has in it. It has the mother and father from Everything Everywhere All at Once, who are not main actors in the show, but they pop up pretty much every episode as other characters.
So what's the basic plot, though? Like, what's going on in the show?
The Monkey King's son doesn't want to grow up to be like his dad, so he comes to Earth and uses magic to look like an ordinary teenage kid, and hijinks ensue because there's also power play dynamics going on, and he has something that people from the Monkey Kingdom and all of that, heaven, celestial orb, they want. So
so it's supernatural forces at play.
Yeah,
here.
It's supernatural. It's got wuxia fighting, in it, and it's just a ball of fun. And if you think of something like Buffy, only less angst. Well, there's little bits of angst, but it's shorter. I enjoyed it a lot. So I've watched it through the full first season. I understand there's a second season now. Which
what is it called again?
American Born Chinese.
American Born Chinese. Great.
Yes.
Yeah. That sounds like something I might want to watch with the girls. They're on they're trying to get through all of Doctor Who, the newer ones.
Sure.
But yeah.
I can't think of anything that's wrong. That's maybe too tender for.
It sounds. I mean, it's
on Disney.
They can handle a lot.
Yeah, it's on Disney.
Yeah.
It should be fine. So they might enjoy it.
Sarah, what have you been reading? What have you come across anything worthy of note?
Yes. So I lead a local library book club. I've done that for about 3-4 years on Zoom since pandemic. And for last week, we discussed a book by a Nobel Prize winner, Olga Olga Tokarczuk. I'm sorry, I'm not Polish. I don't know. But anyway, the book is called Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead, which is paraphrased from a William Blake poem. And it's set in Poland near the Czechoslovakian border. There's an old woman who's kind of cranky. She's the narrator for most of it. There's been some murders. Nobody knows quite what's going on. She's working on a translation project with a buddy of hers from William Blake because she wants more Polish people to read William Blake because they love him, the main character and her buddy. And so also she's a super nature lover and an activist in the neighborhood, goes and yells at hunters and that kind of thing. It's got so much in it. And it was fascinating. To me, part of what it was about is what do you do when you're in a society and you think everyone around you is corrupt? What can you do? She tries some things. It's a tough situation. She's not quite thinking of it she very definitely thinks that people around her are corrupt, but she also has a few friends, someone from a pawn shop, her neighbor, etc. So it's not all angry, but boy, the narrator's voice, I read it in text, but I'm talking about the character's voice is riveting. We all had a really good discussion on it.
Nice.
I'm always worried about reading translations.
Sure. Well, one of the fun things, Lionel, there's a scene in there when she and her buddy, a former student of hers, are trying to translate a William Blake poem. And so there's the Blake, this is translated from the Polish, but what we see as English readers is here's the original Blake stanza from a poem. And then she and her buddy, Dizzy, are going back and forth on, we could translate it this way. Here's one paragraph, stanza, or this way, where they're juggling words to try and get the best approximation of the feel that they can into Polish. Of course, we don't read Polish. The whole thing was translated into English, but you can see the different word choices. And for me, that was fascinating.
Well, that reminds me of Douglas Hofstadter, because Douglas Hofstadter wrote, I don't think in Gödel, Escher, Bach, but maybe in Metamagical Themas, he talks about how do you translate Jabberwocky into another language. Yeah. It's a fascinating discussion. It's an absolutely fascinating discussion. How do you translate Jabberwocky into French? And in fact, people have. And so you, like you said, you have to let your freak flag fly. You've got to say, look, snicker snack and vorpal this, but it's a fascinating mind experiment. But I'm always worried about reading translations. I really think things get lost a lot.
So Lionel, here's the really exciting thing. I posted about it on my company's social website about this. And one of my coworkers I'd never met or talked to before from Portugal, from north of Lisbon, called into our Zoom meeting because she had the book in Portuguese, had been worried it was going to be a bit of a downer. There are some parts in it that are downers, but it is a murder mystery. It does pull you right along. But she joined our call. It started at 10:30 p.m. her time, or 11:30 p.m. her time. Yeah. Anyway, it was late, but she stayed up because she was so excited to get to talk about it with other people. And so she talked a little bit about how it was to read it in Portuguese, which, we took her word for it.
But she's talking to you in English.
She's talking to us in English.
So she's reading a Polish book translated in Portuguese and relaying her experiences to you in English.
She's Portuguese, so she reads it in her native language.
Right.
Yes.
But she's talking to you in English.
She's going to come back to our next meeting in September. I'm just thrilled. Our book in September is going to be Imposter Syndrome by Kathy Wong, who it's a techno thriller with spies and Silicon Valley. And I'm just so pleased that she joined our group to talk about books, and we get to hear her perspective on things too. If there's a book I'm interested in that I've loved, I just love talking about it with other people, especially people with, I enjoy talking about books with my sister Trish, but we look at things fairly alike. It's really interesting to hear about it from people who come at it from completely different angles.
That's great. I am starting the book Piranesi, recommended by Lionel, and I know Sarah, you've read it.
Outrageously good book.
I'm at first I was like,
what is this?
Everybody complains about the first 50 pages. Everybody complains about the first 50 pages.
Are we just going to be walking around in this place looking at statues?
I loved the first 50 pages, but I could definitely see how some people would bounce right off it.
I felt really at home in the house.
It's Susanna Clarke, right?
Yes.
Is that right? And I thought Piranesi, the main character, was a woman. Until a few pages in, where it was a he, but the voice sounded actually female to me. Didn't sound male at all. But yeah, so I've just read what I could get as a preview from the library, and now I was able to borrow it today. So tonight I'll be sitting up reading it. I'll come back and talk about the whole book with Lionel. But yeah, so far it's fascinating beginning. I'm guessing there's a lot more to discover in.
Well, have you ever looked at the drawings of Piranesi? And do you know the story of Piranesi?
No, tell me.
Oh, well, Piranesi, Giovanni Battista Piranesi in the 1700s, I think, was this guy who was embarking on this huge project. He said, we need to restore the glory of Rome. Rome is it's being commercialized. This is in 1700. He said it's being commercialized and we're forgetting the great glories of the past. We now have the power to reconstruct Rome in its classical grandeur. And that was his life's work. And as a side project, he says, okay, I'm going to make some paintings. I'm going to do some etchings to show you what I'm talking about. And he proceeds to create this series of etchings that people have worshipped ever since. He's like the Miles Davis of etching. Like, regardless of whether you like him or not, you got to deal with Piranesi because he completely changed the art form of etching. And he did these incredible etchings. And then as Susanna Clark herself mentions, you can listen to an interview with her, he puts out this thing called carceri, the prisons. And at this point, he's completely detached from reality, and he's creating these these enormous prisons, these vast landscapes of torture and imprisonment. But they're not scary; they're just huge and incomprehensible, and they go on forever. They are kind of scary, but they're not gory or threatening. They're just really weird and lonely. And so you got to just go to the Wikipedia, look at Piranesi, look at Carceri, hugely influential on Terry Gilliam. His work for 12 Monkeys was based upon Piranesi. I mean, Terry Gilliam came out and said, yeah, Carceri is my vision.
If you think of Escher's buildings and how the architecture has all this stuff, how does that even work? That's like a simplified, elegant version of some of Piranesi's prison drawings, where a million times more baroque. Baroque is the wrong word for Piranesi, but anyway, think of architecture that you just don't understand how it even works, but it's big and grand and amazing to look at.
Yeah, just check it out. Just look at those paintings, and you'll see where Susanna Clark is coming from.
Nice. Okay. Yeah,
it's basically Piranesi and it's C.S. Lewis. Those are
strange.
And who's the third guy? Who's the Crowley? Aleister Crowley. That's the third.
Yeah, that's all those are kind of mixed in.
And
a way.
Her character painting is so exquisite. How she paints each of the characters. You're going to meet a whole bunch of people.
Stop! Don't spoil it.
There's only two people. Only two people there.
Part of the glory of that book was how it unfolded.
Yeah.
And I think if you let it happen. I'm not going to say any word. I'm not going to say any names, but I'm just saying, it's no surprise that other people are going to enter the book at some point, at some time. But
that's a relief.
Look at how she paints them. Look at how she paints them. It's so exquisite. It's so good and they're so distinct. Anyway, enough about Piranesi. Fabulous book. I've now reread it like 5 times.
Cool. How do you spell it so I can actually find it?
It is Piranesi.
ESI.
Yeah. And you're going to find Giovanni Battista Piranesi, but you may also find the book.
Okay. I did find
Susanna Clark. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. I'm like pushing all this stuff into my library holds right now so I can.
It's pretty interesting. Later. It's nothing like anything else.
Nothing.
Just
nothing like anything else.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
It's like, did you ever read The Magician's Nephew by C.S. Lewis?
Yes.
I think so. I can't remember.
That's a good point. You already mentioned there's some Lewis C.S. Lewis mixed in there.
There's that
a
ton
one rather than say A Horse and a Boy.
It's a much more adult and malevolent version of The Magician's Nephew. And in fact, if you've never read The Magician's Nephew, you should probably read it.
I put it on my list. I can't remember.
Originally, when the 9 books of Narnia were issued, The Magician's Nephew was the last book, which is weird because it's actually the first book. It's the
internal chronology. It's a prequel, but it was published after everything else.
Right, it's published, but it's really the first book, and it's it's a goofy book.
I like The Magician's Nephew.
I like The Magician. I just reread it because I reread it again because I reread Parasocial and I reread The Magician's Nephew. And C.S. Lewis, it's easy to make fun of him because it's very easy reading. But The Magician's Nephew, he has some incredibly beautiful metaphors that are just timeless, that artists, and you'll see, if you read The Magician's Nephew, which takes like about 3 hours, if you have a cup of coffee, read The Magician's Nephew, then read about Giovanni Battista Piranesi in Wikipedia, and then go read Piranesi by Susanna Clark, which will take a couple of days.
Or someone could just start with Piranesi. I think it does stand alone. There's stuff they'll miss. It's in conversation with other books.
Yeah, come back to it.
But you can read it on its own.
You can read it on its own. It's great. And it's so funny. She has a perfect British sense of humor that is so exquisite. But anyway, yeah, Kieran, I'm sorry.
Excited. I have to say, I don't often get excited about what I'm reading. So this one I started last night, and it definitely got me. Oh, speaking of excited, last week we had Greg Oliar on the pod. I think both of you heard the episode. And I know, Sarah, you said you had put it in your Nook. You got Empress in your Nook.
I went ahead and downloaded it. I bought it already.
Started it yet, but
I haven't. I have other commitments for reading that I have to be ready to talk about. So
that's fine. I think it's a remarkable book. There's some really hard. There's trigger warnings. I mean, there are plenty.
Like every other page.
I looked a little at the
really
Wikipedia article on the person, and sure, she didn't have a great life, but it certainly looks interesting. And I know maybe enough Byzantine history from earlier, not from her period, but I have read some about Justinian, Theodora, etc., earlier Byzantine stuff. And I'm really looking forward to reading. This has when the First Crusade is coming to Constantinople. Through Constantinople, and in a fictitious way because of Anna Kay. The 11-year-old who came up with this genius plan to keep Western Europe occupied. Well, I liked your term for it, Jim, of fictional autobiography, which that caught my interest. I enjoy reading some alternate history, or secret history. What if all the things happened, but there was a lot more going on, that explains things. And sometimes that can get into stupid conspiracy theory stuff. But sometimes it's just really interesting to look at the what ifs, and maybe there were other things, other angles to look at how what was going on happened. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and this one very, very purposefully. I think it's great on a number of levels. I know Lionel read it, but I would maintain that he read it at the wrong time in his life, and maybe you should go back and take a look at it again.
No, I'm going to read the rest of it because I read about. Don't tell Greg. I only read 60.
Yeah. All of his listeners now have joined, and they're listening to the pod, and they're like, Lionel didn't read the whole thing.
I read 60% of the way into it, but it sounds like something really big happens with the First Crusade. I think I stopped just before that all got underway. Well, so I'll read the rest of it.
Yeah. I mean, it progresses. I mean, yes. It's hard to explain.
That's fine. I'll read it.
I think it's just fantastic.
Okay.
What was I going to say?
What about Ben?
I want to go back to Ben because
you're talking about smart books. I don't know anything about those. I read trash.
Well, in some ways, you could think of Neuromancer as being book one in a trilogy, and I don't know if you've gone on to read, or you've maybe thinking about reading. What are the other? You don't think of it as a trilogy, Lionel? You don't?
I just don't think they're worth reading, honestly.
The first paragraph of the second book.
The Count Zero. The first paragraph of Count Zero is definitely worth reading. It's one of the most beautiful paragraphs in the world. But
I put it on my wall. It's so good.
But it's like the first chapter of Freaky Deaky by Elmore Leonard. It's one of the most gorgeous first chapters in the history of mankind. But honestly, I don't know really. I mean, if you're William Gibson fanboy, read it all. It's all worth reading, kinda. But to me, the thing was reading the Peripheral. To me, the Peripheral was just like a renaissance. But you can read Count Zero and Mona Lisa Overdrive, and then there's the pattern recognition tree.
Which I liked. I liked pattern recognition.
The Hubertus Big End trio, the
Chase,
Big End,
Chase Pollard,
Chase Pollard, and Hubertus Bi End or Big End,
Big End.
Yeah, and all that stuff. And there's all kinds of stuff to read his stuff, but definitely Neuromancer's fabulous.
Yeah,
I think the Peripheral is absolutely fabulous. And the funny thing is about how the Peripheral is basically the Neuromancer, but written by somebody who's now 50 years older.
Yeah.
Or 40 years older.
And it's more modern too. Like one thing I really liked about Neuromancer is how you could tell all of the other inspirations that rippled out of it from that book.
Oh yeah.
From just like all the other media that kind of happened after Neuromancer.
Oh yeah. The Japanese, the obsession with Japan.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of stuff in there.
And then like reading the Peripheral, you can definitely tell that there's a lot of parallels to that. And like obviously written by somebody who's far more mature, like, 30 years later or whatever.
Yeah. Living in today.
So, yeah. But I will check out some of the other Gibson books. They are tough for me to chew through, but I do enjoy reading them. They're just like, I can only take them in chunks because there's so much like abstract visuals and stuff that, like how are you supposed to describe like going through the metaverse or the Matrix or whatever they called it. And it's just like, it is abstract. It has to be abstract just due to the nature of what you're talking about. And like that takes a while for me to process sometimes.
Yeah, no, I sometimes had trouble visualizing what he was describing. The spindle I found very difficult to grasp when he was first talking about it, but he does introduce some amazing ideas of the AIs acting like voodoo gods and inhabiting people, and this is really fantastic stuff.
I think the description, one of my favorite parts of Neuromancer is the description of when he takes drugs. Like he actually finds drugs that his body can metabolize because they've put like filters in his body so he can't take, but he manages to find this one drug he can take and he gets completely blitzed. And then there's like him the day after and how horrible. It's so brilliant.
Yeah, it's a great description of a hangover. And there's a woman who's sort of like a kung fu expert.
Yeah, there's Sally.
And she shouts out the name of this like speed that she's taking sort of blissfully at some point in one chapter that I love. It's like neuroduramethylepylene,
Oh no, she poisons Rivera. She poisons Rivera and says, I served him, like you said, hexafluor 12 trimethane. And somebody says, oh my God, a hot shot. She goes, a real slow hot shot. But yeah, good books, all fun.
Yeah.
So what else is going on? What other books we got?
Isn't that enough? Enough?
Come on. It's 6:27. We've got 3 minutes left. Come on.
It's not something I started reading. I've read it before, but How to Live by Derek Sivers. It's backwards on the thing. Derek Sivers, if you're not familiar, is the founder of CD Baby. And he basically eventually got bought out, and part of his contract was he couldn't work in that sector anymore. So obviously he was like a millionaire now, and he couldn't do that. So he started writing books. He started doing inspirational stuff. Derek Sivers has quite a few really short books, and like they're really good. And How to Live basically takes lifestyles and like puts them to the extreme. And it's like you could live this way if you wanted to, and you could like. I mean, I could go through it, but like here, I'll some of the chapters might help me explain it. Like how to be independent. It's like, misery comes from dependency, and it's like, this is the thing, and then you can be how to live like being dependent and all this other stuff, and it just has these different perspectives on how to approach life, and it gives you a lot of interesting. At least for me, it gave me a lot of interesting. Perspective on like, well, I could live my life this way, but that would be like far too extreme, and I could like blend these together in ways that feel more like holistic, I guess is the right word, but it just allows me to have a better perspective on like how to approach living and how to approach like how I spend my time and how I spend my energy and how I like enjoy the things that I'm doing. I really enjoy that.
So he's not telling you how to live your life. He's showing you like extreme cases.
Yes. Thank you for distilling that down into something that's comprehensible.
It reminds me of a book that I had a long time ago. It was this tiny little chapbook that was put out by a tiny little publishing company. It probably doesn't exist anymore. It was called Daily Afflictions by Andrew Boyd. And it was It was just these very negative page, like one little 2-sentence piece on each page, incredibly
demotivators,
daily afflictions. They were wonderful, because you were like, oh, I'm not thinking this badly. I'm not this depressed. But I love them. The other, interestingly, I'm trying this thing called Blinkist, which is like little book summaries that, like 10-minute summaries of, and then mostly what's up there is like motivational books or like, Great Habits of Billionaires or just this crap. But it's interesting to read. I'm interesting to like take 10 minutes. I'm like, I got 10 minutes for this. I want to see what's going on. What are people like, people who are never going to be billionaires are like reading these things, hoping that they will somehow it will turn them into a billionaire. And there have been some interesting bits of it that have come up. One of which I started doing, which is getting up at 5 a.m. and doing yoga. So there's I don't know. It's funny. It's great though. Like I feel good that I'm only dedicating that amount of time to these books, right? So I'm digesting them a little bit, or summaries of them. They're cliff notes in audio form, and we'll see what happens.
The thing with those types of books, and this is a broad generalization, but they usually are just a pamphlet extended out to 800 pages.
Yeah. Right. And you're not missing anything.
Exactly. Like you get the thesis within the first chapter, and the rest is just repetition and reinforcement of that idea. And and that's why I like these How to Live, like Derek Sivers' books, because like each chapter is a page and like each sentence is a paragraph. And it's just like, they're very, very quick reads, and he actually just talks about what's important and then just moves on. And it's not something that you spend, 2 weeks reading. It's just something you sit down in an afternoon and you just absorb all of this information. And it's like very inspiring for me to just kind of like just roll through a bunch of ideas, and then I can chew on them for the next couple of weeks and think about them and stuff.
He started a project called Now, which is, people adding a page to their website that is like, your domain /now. And you basically just put up whatever it is you're doing now. And I do it once a year, but you're supposed to like do it every week or something like that. And then you get listed websites with Now. He's got a bot that's going around searching for these things. No, he's an interesting dude. Definitely an interesting dude. I would say the place that Blinkist falls down is like on a book like by Malcolm Gladwell or Seth Godin, where you're really not getting quite enough, but it might get you interested in reading the rest of the book.
Yeah. And speaking of Derek Sivers, the album that you worked with me on, Derek Sivers is on that album too.
Oh, nice. What did he play?
I didn't steal it because I asked for permission, but every blog post that he makes he does a spoken word thing for it too. So he actually narrates out the blog post, and I took one called Disconnect, and I made a song
nice.
around that blog post. And it was a lot of fun. It was really cool to basically just take an audio like narration and like build a song around it. It was a lot of fun.
Well, so you included the audio narration bits in it. Not just inspired by, but you actually wove in some of. Okay.
Yeah, I did.
So
go ahead.
So a guy died recently, an artist I knew nothing about, but his famous work that everybody talked about was called John Somebody. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I don't.
know.
He's pretty famous. It was top of the obituaries in the New York Times. It's called John Somebody, and he took recordings of people talking and orchestrated them, and like took the rhythms of what they were saying and the pitches of what they were saying. And so check it out. It's really cool. John Somebody. Yeah, is the name of the piece. It's a really fascinating piece to listen to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's Scott Johnson, right, Lionel?
Is it?
Looks like just from a search.
Yeah, I found a SoundCloud
Scott Johnson
link,
explains the genesis of John Somebody.
Yeah, it's really it's fascinating to read. Yeah, and the interesting thing is that there's nothing special about what he did. I mean, Ottorino Respighi was trying to mimic songbirds with orchestral instruments in the Pines of Rome. But he was the guy who was trying to like take the speech and the rhythms of speech, which became much easier to do later on with electronic music. It's very easy to do with an envelope follower and a pitch converter. But John Somebody was him it's real, and it's also cool. I mean, it's a good tune.
I've started listening to a podcast called Out of the Blocks, which is based in Baltimore, and it takes a city block at a time. And I really like whoever I should remember his name, but the musician and sound producer, the way he will riff off what someone is saying, or like there was something with a woman who was a gospel singer, and she was talking about, her faith, and hummed a little bit of a hymn. And just very faintly in the background, you can hear a vibraphone that's doing the same hymn, only it's like an echo. She'll sing a little bit of the hymn, and then he vibraphones, or however he produced it, just a little bit of that song, kind of, and he keeps weaving in bits of his music with whoever this person on the Baltimore block who owns a barber shop. And he'll put in, some Dominican music for that. I don't know much about it, but I've gotten more and more interested in really good sound production that does that kind of backing and amplifying, but in a gentle way. So if you're not paying attention, it's not obtrusive, not intrusive. But if you're paying attention, it's like, oh, that's so cool.
It's a second conversation going on in the background.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating, because that's sort of like what music is. Like when you listen to Bach, you realize the bass line is a melody, and the melody is a melody, and the middle part's a melody. And you can listen to it as one big thing, but you can also listen to each part as it's going along and realize it's 4 different melodies.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's great. It's art.
Did any of you catch that there was a guy who recorded a song in his backyard, and it became like number 1, like on the charts instantly? Have you heard of this?
I missed it.
No, I haven't.
Oh, I can't remember the guy's name, but everybody else knows it. It's like Clay something. So he's kind of, it seems like he's kind of like a right-wing everyman, kind of a right-wing.
Oh, it's the rich men north of Richmond.
Yeah, Richmond
is in the New York Times. Yeah.
Yes. Right, I read about it. Was it what is his name? Richmond, top New York charts. Oliver Anthony. It's funny. I was looking at a YouTube video of him, and he was just sort of talking about his worldview, and he kept saying, "It's just common sense. It's just common sense," and it really got me thinking about what the hell is common sense. What the hell do we mean when we say it's just common sense?
Well, I hate that, because it's like when people say, "Oh, I'm just keeping it real." No, you're not. You're just saying that I'm wrong and you're right.
Yes.
So why don't you just say I'm wrong and you're right, and we can take it from there? Or when people say, "Well, I'm just saying," you're just saying what?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You're just saying what? What you're saying is that I'm wrong and you're right. Okay, so let's say that instead of just saying. But anyway, sorry.
It goes back to, it reminds me of a conversation we had, Lionel, about how a lot of stuff is just,
It's not.
It's not.
It's not. Anyway.
That's all I got.
Let's do this again.
Yeah.
This was fun.
Did we get through everybody's? So let's swap a book.
Well, listen, I think Piranesi is going to take me a while. All right.
You're doing Piranesi.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll read Inferno.
I have my assignment.
Or what should I read? Should I read Bones of the
finish
Dead?
Empress. Finish Empress, for crying out loud.
Okay.
I'll read Empress. Lionel can read something else if he really wants to.
I put like 7 books on my library, so I don't know.
I saw something. I'm sorry, Ben. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I just said I put like 7 books on my holds for the library, so I'll read whatever one comes first.
So which one are you going to read? We should read like 2 books in common and discuss 2 books in common. So what 2 books are we going to do, Olga?
I could send the information on that. Sure. Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead is not. It's not that long.
Yeah. I have that one on my list, so hopefully I'll get that one soon.
It might be 350 pages, but I don't remember. Maybe that's Olga, the Kathy Wong book.
And who else? And what other? You, Jim? Let's do Piranesi. Well, you've already read Piranesi, Sarah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've read that already. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ben, do you want to give that a try?
It's on my list.
Okay.
So
all right.
Piranesi and Bones.
I like your roulette bin of whatever the library hold delivers to you next.
Yep. That's pretty much how I live my life right now. It's like, another one's in. It's time to read again.
I probably got your hold. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Great to have you both back.
This was fun.
Let's absolutely do this again. We'll see when we're caught up on our reading and have this conversation again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Take care. Push the button. There it is.
The Funny Not Funny podcast is produced by me, Jim Infantino. This clip from the album Utopia Revisited. We are found wherever podcasts are found. Visit our website at funnynotfunny.bigego.com. Please tell your friends and leave a rating or review.